Say what you will about performance brands like AMG being watered down these days, but it doesn't bug me one bit. In fact, I'll take it a step further and say this AMG tuned version of the Mercedes GLC parked behind me, well, it might just be perfect. Look, I'm not here to stop anyone from buying the most outrageous vehicles on the market, so if you've got your heart set on the V8 version of this thing, I say knock yourself out. But if you're looking for a nice blend of performance and practicality, I really think this GLC 43 is the way to go. Now, the bones are the same no matter what, and the GLC makes great use of its footprint. There's a great amount of space inside for 4 adults to fit comfortably, but it doesn't prioritize passenger space over cargo room, and there's tons of space in the back too. Not every manufacturer uses the same methodology to measure cargo volume, and the GLC really suffers on paper, but trust me, there's tons of space back here. And if you park it next to something like the Toyota RAV4, the cargo areas are almost identical. Yet Toyota lists that thing at almost 500 liters more, both with the seats upright and with them folded. But more than just outright space, this thing is also comfortable and well sorted too. I really dig the vibe of this interior. I love the look of all this leather and microfiber upholstery, and this red accent stitching gives it a nice little bit of character. The one I'm driving also has this cool carbon fiber panel on the center stack, as well as the same upholstery combo on the steering wheel, and it all comes together to give it the look of a proper performance vehicle. And if you want to take that look a step further, you can option it with some crazy sport seats that look like they are ripped right out of the AMG GT. I like the way this thing is spec'd without those seats, and I think it gets nice and close to that line of being sporty and modern without going overboard. It remains practical and useful first and foremost. I think the only thing for me that's missing in here are the optional red seat belts that are like $250, and they would be the perfect icing on the cake in here. But whether you're talking about the inside or the outside, this isn't a case of being all show and no go, and there's plenty about this that I like in the performance department. Now, no, this engine isn't hand-built like it is in the V8 version of this GLC, but it's still a very nice motor. You do get twin turbos as well as some AMG tuning. You just don't get that hot V format that has the turbos wedged in between the cylinder banks. But still, output's been cranked up to 385 horsepower to go along with 384 pound-feet of torque. And that output is routed to all 4 wheels through a rear-biased all-wheel drive system. And it gets there using a 9-speed automatic transmission. It's not the dual-clutch setup you get with the V8 motor, but it's still a pretty fast transmission, even though it relies on a conventional torque converter to transfer that power from the motor through the transmission. I have noticed a few hiccups this week though, and there have been these awkward kind of lurches, especially when you're rolling from a dead stop. It just kind of surges forward like the transmission is slipping before it finds first gear, but it is plenty quick when it shifts. Now, Mercedes says this thing will do the sprint to 100 clicks in about 5 seconds, so a second slower than the V8 version. But that's still plenty fast in my books, especially if you're using this as a daily driver. There's also this great electromechanical steering setup and adaptive air suspension at all 4 corners. So this thing isn't just quick in a straight line, and you can toss it into a turn if you want to as well. And then when it comes to the rest of the go fast parts, they're actually not that far off from the 63S version. The only things you're going to notice are different are the bigger brakes and tires you get in that version, as well as the limited slip rear differential. But again, I think this thing is better because it's not the V8 version. Because once you dial it all back and drive it casually, it's just like any other luxury SUV. It's smooth, it's quiet, and it's not all that sporty. It just hits with that kind of duality that makes it the perfect compromise if you're looking for something sporty and fun, but not for everyday use. If you look at that GLC 63S, it's a lot like the Trackhawk I reviewed, a novelty. Sure, it's hilarious to drive a vehicle with a massive V8 shoehorned under the hood that can outrun most sports cars, but that's not great for everyday use, and if you're going to commute in it or shuttle the kids around, it's not really the perfect vehicle. Whereas this one gives you that sportiness, but it also works as an everyday ride. And by the way, if you haven't watched that review, make sure you check it out after this, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. But SUVs like that, they do their best to be civil, but they're just kind of raucous. Whereas if you look at this thing, if you don't have it in one of its sporty settings, it's actually pretty tame. Now, it does have pretty low profile tires, so you feel most bumps and cracks in the road, but the ride quality is excellent, and it's all because of that air suspension. And that also means you can drop the rear end with a button in the back if you want a lower load floor, so you can take advantage of that massive cargo area. The steering is really mild-mannered too, and I like that you're not wrestling with it when you're just cruising around casually. I really like the way this thing comes together as a commuter, and that brings me back to these seats. Because yeah, those sport seats are pretty cool to look at, but I couldn't imagine sitting in them every day on my way to work. These ones are supportive in all the right ways, so when you're hustling this thing around, they're gonna keep you nice and planted, but they don't feel like you're strapped into a race car. This thing was updated for 2020, and it makes the GLC even better for day-to-day use. For starters, let's take a look at this touchscreen. It's the optional 10.25-inch unit, and it's pretty great overall, though there are some weird quirks about it. For starters, when you're using Apple CarPlay, it doesn't fill out the whole screen, so you get these awkward dead spots on either side. And if you look at something like the Kia Soul, you get a widescreen CarPlay format with the same size touchscreen. I was expecting a little more from Mercedes-Benz here, but on the flip side, there are a bunch of features you get in this that you can't get with other brands, like a cool augmented reality feature in the navigation system. The other thing to point out is that you get all kinds of cool camera displays, though same thing applies. They don't fill out the entire screen, so you get some dead spots on either side. Something else to point out is that there's no skip button for the audio system. I can't figure that out for the life of me. There is this one down here on this touchpad, but when you click it, all it does is pull up a corresponding display on the touchscreen. So you still have to tap the touchscreen or use this little touch-sensitive controller on the steering wheel. Very weird that they got rid of that altogether. The other stupid thing is that if you don't pay for this bigger touchscreen, you don't get Apple CarPlay or Android Auto at all. I mean, it's 2020 Mercedes, it's time to get with it. That should be standard, especially in a vehicle that was updated for this year. And the same goes for the rest of the safety and driver assistance stuff you want. You've gotta pay to play. If you look at this head-up display, that's a standalone option at $1,500, but most of the rest of them come as part of pricey packages. If you want this bigger touchscreen that comes with the augmented nav, all those different parking camera views, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and a self-parking system, that'll set you back $6,200. Then there's a technology package that gets you this digital gauge cluster as well as steering responsive headlights, and that's $1,900, but you can't add that unless you get that $6,200 one as well. Then it's $2,700 for adaptive cruise control and lane keep assist, and another $3,000 for some extra AMG goodies. That is a lot of scratch, but that AMG pack is pretty cool. First of all, it gets you these controls down here on the steering wheel. The one on the right is a dial so you can run through your different drive modes, and then on the left you have these two buttons that are programmable. So if you want to be able to tone down your exhaust on the fly or shut off your traction control, you can set them that way. The AMG pack also includes these massive 21-inch wheels that are staggered, as well as that sport exhaust in the back, and a cool program that lets you monitor lap times and stuff through the head unit as well as on your smartphone. Once you add it all up, my tester is priced at $83,000 before fees and taxes, but I still think it's pretty reasonable for what you're getting, aside from the lack of ventilated front seats and heated rear seats. If you look at it next to the 63S version of the GLC, that's $10,000 you're saving. I don't know about you, but that's an awful lot to pay for more performance. And if you're still on the fence, consider this. That $93,000, it doesn't get you all of those options I just ran through. So you're gonna have to pay an extra $18,500 to spec that 63S version, just like the one I'm driving. That is a lot of money. Now, you can save yourself a bunch more if you skip those options, but at the very least, I think you're gonna want that package that has this big touchscreen and those other extras, and that puts this thing at about $70,000 before tax and fees, which is definitely pretty reasonable and easy to stomach. To recap, I love the level of performance you get from the Mercedes-AMG GLC 43, but that it doubles as a great daily driver and it has tons of space inside. I don't like how expensive some of the upgrades are, the fact the optional widescreen doesn't get used fully with Apple CarPlay and the different camera views, or the fact CarPlay and Android Auto aren't standard. As far as performance SUVs go, this GLC 43 is just right. No, it's not the top of the heap when it comes to power or speed, but that's what makes it such a great option, especially if you're going to drive it every day. Because trust me, it's got more than enough performance chops, but it balances that against a great family-friendly space inside and a relaxed ride when you're just looking to get from point A to point B.